What is aperture and how to use it in camera? What is the relation between aperture, light, and depth of field? Coming up. Aperture is simply the size of the hole inside your camera lens, which allows more light or less light inside your camera. Consider the aperture as the eye iris. The pupil gets bigger or smaller depending on the light. In the daytime, the pupil will be smaller to reduce the amount of light coming into the eye. At nighttime, the pupil will be bigger to allow more light to come into your eye. The aperture in the camera acts the same. If you need more light, you open the lens wide to allow more light inside the camera. And if you need less light, you reduce the opening in the lens to allow less light inside the camera. The aperture is the only thing from the exposure triangle that's located outside the camera body. It's in the camera lens. The main two things controlled by aperture are light and depth of field. If the lens hole is bigger, it will allow more light inside the camera and it will give you shallow depth of field. On the other hand, if you make the lens hole smaller, it will allow less light inside the camera and will create a great depth of field. Here we have 4 images to see the impact of aperture on photographs: night photography, food photography, a portrait, and landscape. For night photography, a smaller f-stop will allow much more light into the sensor. This is great for dark shots taken at night. For food photography, you can use shallow depth of field. The food will be in focus and the background will be out of focus. In portrait photography, the best solution is to use shallow depth of field when the subject will be in focus and the background will be out of focus and blurry. And that will make your subject stand out. On the other hand, if you are shooting a landscape, you need a great depth of field. f11 or more will be the best solution. This will make everything in focus: foreground, midground, and background. Let's talk about depth of field. In this example, the subject will be always in focus. Just see what will happen in the background. I started with f2, shallow depth of field. The subject will be in focus and the background will be out of focus. If we increase the f number from f2 to f22, the subject and the background will be in focus. In the grapes example, I used shallow depth of field. This means that part of the image will be in focus and everything else will be out of focus. The viewer's eyes will go straight to the focused area. You can change the focus from one part of the image to any part depending on what you need to focus on. And this is a very good example for food photography. If you are shooting many products, I start using f22, great depth of field. That means more stuff in focus, so you can see the products in focus. But when I reduce the f number from f22 to f2, only one product will be in focus and the rest out of focus. And here you can change the focus from one product to another depending on which one you need to be in focus, and at the same time the viewer will concentrate on that product. To explain the relation between f-stops and depth of field, I used chess pieces. The camera focuses on the one in the middle. The depth of field will start shallow, f2. When we increase the f number from f2 to f22, then it will be deep depth of field. That means everything will be in focus. The last thing you need to consider is when you're using aperture without considering ISO or shutter speed, it will make your image darker. So to get the right exposure, you need to adjust the ISO or the shutter speed or both of them to get the right amount of light inside your camera, and then you can achieve shallow depth of field or great depth of field depending on what you need to achieve. If you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And see you in the next video.